Hi, Zeina. We're just gonna wait for like a couple of, like maybe a minute, just so more people can join before I get started. Hi, everyone. Hi, Salma. Okay, I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and get started, and then maybe more people can join later. So welcome everyone to Ithraa's live program. Can't believe this is actually episode 10 of this program. I feel like time has passed by so fast. My name is Sarah Beiruty, and I'm so excited to be hosting tonight, especially that we have a very special guest. She's from our own family in Ithraa, but coming from Ithraa Lebanon. So it's going to be a really interesting episode. And again, every episode I like to reiterate as to why we like to have and engage in this program, especially during this quarantine or semi-quarantine period. We really try to connect with people and share stories of inspiration and meaningful stories, just so we could connect with our audience, for you guys to connect with us and ask us any questions you might have, and to support each other during this time. So first, I'd like to briefly talk about our center, and then I'm going to introduce my guest and invite her on. So Ithraa is a training and coaching center that empowers people, communities, and organizations to understand and strengthen their social emotional health, build resilience, and also make sustainable changes in their lives. So the aim of that center is to really help people reach their full potential on both a personal and a professional living. What I personally appreciate about my own journey during the trainings and the courses is that it took me on a journey of self-awareness and self-growth, where I started really understanding myself, my relational needs, how to communicate better with others, how to advance relationships and make them healthier. Sorry. Can everyone hear me? Because I feel like the connection just paused. If you can hear me, can someone comment a thumbs up, please? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So I'm gonna introduce my guest, give you a brief introduction about her. Her name is Zeina Habib. Zeina is a relational needs and resilience coach from Ithraa Lebanon. And now she is actually currently living in Boston and works as a project manager in a construction company. At the same time, Zeina is a certified coach accredited by the International Coach Federation, so ICF. Zeina's passion really lies in helping young women and youth become who they really want to be by connecting to their emotions and exploring their passions and full potentials. So I'm going to be inviting Zeina to join us right now. She should be with us any second.
Hi,
Hi. How are you?
good. How are you?
Good. How's everything with you in Boston? I can't believe you moved there like 9 months ago, right?
Yes, I did. In September. It's good. The weather is better now. I think that's very important because usually here it's snowing all the time. So we're just happy that the weather is so much better and it feels like a bit more like Lebanon.
Yeah, totally understand. And how are you doing during the quarantine period? How have things been?
It's ups and downs. Some days are more difficult because you miss family, you miss your friends, you miss going out and doing your activities. Other days it feels good that we got to slow down. It just makes you think more, it makes you do more things that you're interested in. So you have more time to do the things that you didn't do before. And that's something that has been really good for me, whether it's on the coaching perspective or on the personal perspective, from the personal perspective.
I'm really glad to hear that. I feel like definitely that was an opportunity for everyone to do things they've never been able to do. It was a break from everything, and I'm glad to hear that you were enjoying it in that manner.
Thank you.
So Zaina, I'd love to ask you a lot of questions. First, I know you have an engineering background, right? You come from an engineering background. So I'm wondering what kind of, how did you come to start your journey with Ithraa in Lebanon? What got you to meet them and be a coach there?
So since I was young, even when I was like studying to become an engineer, I always had this voice in the back of my mind that said, you need to do something that makes a change. And I felt that, and I kind of forgot about it. It became in the back of my mind until one day, just I felt like I was not myself anymore. In the construction world, you kind of become about tasks, finishing tasks. You become kind of a tough personality, and you forget that part of yourself. So one day at work, one of my friends had done Ithraa, and she's like, "You should probably take this training, like to just do something different and change." And I ended up going. And at first time, it was different because you go in, and I just like I literally did not know what I was getting myself into. So I just saw people sitting at tables and like coaching, introducing myself themselves. So it was a bit like weird for me. And then like I started doing the training. I felt I was changing and I felt like I belong here. Like this is something I can really see myself doing. And it turns out that it was working from both sides. So they had a youth camp in Lebanon. We do the Ithraa youth camp. So since I had worked before with youth as a scouts, so they're like, you want to join us? And then they trained me and I worked and I started helping in the youth camp, and then I became part of also the training, the normal training. So it just became kind of a transformational point in my life, like moments you don't really expect, just from going to a training, meeting people you don't know, to just becoming a coach. And it was really interesting, and it changed me, and I like that.
That's so beautiful to hear. I feel like change is so important, like getting out of your comfort zone and finding yourself. And I'm so happy that you had that chance to really, like your friend just told you about it, and then just you went. And a lot of these stories like happen, and then you don't know what to expect, but then it turns out to be so beautiful. So I'm glad to hear that that was the
Thank you.
experience for you. So you were just talking about how you worked with youth camps, right? That's interesting. Can you tell me more about your experience there and kind of like why you enjoy working with youth?
So the first thing, I didn't know what to expect the first time we started. I participated in the camp, and it was really nice and life changing because you kind of have to mix between giving training and kind of enriching these people and being empathetic and being present and having them transform themselves, and at the same time having them enjoy their time. And that is so like me because I'm all about coaching and training, but there's a side of me which is also kind of like fun and just kind of breathing into that energy. So I got the chance to do both from that one side, and I got a chance to see how this transforms youth because they grow when they get a chance to do things the way they like it and learn at the same time. So that was big. And then when I started hearing the stories and I started understanding like whether it's the limiting beliefs, the things that we believe, like you thinking they're not pretty, they're too fat or not fit enough. And it just started to feel like I need to do something. Like if this camp, after it was over and we saw the change, like even if it was 5 days and probably need more time for it to be permanent, but just seeing it in a few days and seeing how their faces were and how they became attached to each other, they formed bonds, they made friends. And even if it was one or two things that they took with them, just being able to be part of that change and knowing that if I did that constantly, I can simply inspire people. There was no way I was going to back out of this or I wasn't going to keep doing it. It just felt so good for others and for me. And I just knew that this is a great opportunity that I really wanted to keep going. And I think these camps really do change the life of a lot of youth.
I totally understand you, and absolutely. I mean, once you start seeing change, you're like, how can I not do more of that with other people and inspire them even more and more? So it's kind of like rewarding, but yet in a way contagious. Like you want to do that and spread more of that. So I can totally understand that, especially in the field.
Yeah.
Um, Definitely. So do you have any advice for people who are currently working with youth in different like areas? Any advice for those people? Because I know it's like a sensitive generation in a way. There's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe a few things. One thing is to really listen. I've said that before, but when you're talking to someone young, as adults, we tend to think like, what do I have to say that is gonna add value to me? But when you listen from that perspective, you can hear a lot of things you don't usually hear. like someone who's constantly either asking you to give them attention or who just want to be accepted for who they are. And when you listen clearly, you hear those messages and you know how to act with them and how to change your behavior. So instead of just being on defensive, you're just trying to understand them and come up from a different point of view. There's one thing that I saw is really important. And also kind of, if you want to deliver a message, it's the how with the youth that works. Because if I sit here and I just lecture them, they're not going to listen. They're not going to hear it. So do it their way. Do it through games. Do it through, depending on each person. So kind of understand how the people you're dealing with take that information, especially when they're young, and use that. So basically, it's just really listening and trying to understand their perspective to help them.
That makes totally sense because you have to do it their way, as you just said. It's not like you're treating them as adults, like something more interactive. And I feel like with youth, based on my experience so far, they really just want to be accepted, and heard, and just really hearing them in their way and just reflecting and taking all that before saying anything else. So I totally, appreciate
And
what you said.
I wanted to add, like accepting them also, I know this is going to sound not contradicting, but it's also nice to set the rules for how things are, because when you set the rules, you kind of also give them a framework to work within, so they feel accepted, but they know what is accepted and what is not at the same time. Like,
Right.
I wanted to, it's a bit of a balance, because you have to also, when you set the rules, they feel better because they know what is expected of them. So it kind of helps in both ways.
Totally. Like also setting some boundaries, like for a distance, that's definitely important. So the big question here is something that I really want to ask you. You do come from an engineering and construction background, and then you went through the ICF training to be a life coach. And I know that that wasn't easy. It was like a really long training for you. Can you tell me what inspired you to shift that way and be a life coach?
So I remember that moment clearly. We were in Ithraa doing training of trainers. So it was training for us.
The TOT one, right?
The TOT.
I heard
So out of the TOT, yeah, and we were in a chapter where we were supposed to map our fears. So it's kind of an exercise that you do to map your fears. And then the session was over, and I was like, literally everyone was stunned that day because we had discovered things about ourselves that were new. So I had a one-on-one with my coach, and I was sitting there, and we were working in a way like with sand trays. So I was doing a sand tray, and then after the session was over, the point was that I was afraid of not being myself, of surviving life instead of actually living it. And at that point, I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Not because days are passing by, not because I got used to it. That's something we always do. We get used to something. I was good at my job. I was so used to it that it was easy. But if it's easy, it doesn't mean that this is what you should do. So at that moment, I knew there's no way I'm backing off. I'm not going to live in that place where I'm in fear of not being myself or I'm not happy. So I started at the first wanting to be either in psychology. It was kind of a journey of just researching, finding out what are the options. And then I found an online option to do academic life coaching with a program in the US. It was an 8-month program, if I could kind of put it all together. But the problem was that it was 3 a.m. in the morning on Monday and some days on Tuesday. So sometimes I had to wake up twice per week from 3 a.m. till 5 a.m. to do the program. But here's the thing. When you really want something, you really do it. And this is coming from someone who used to start projects and like not finish them. But when you really, really want something, you work for it. So I did that. And then I recorded coaching so that because they have to review it. And then I did the test. And I was just determined because it represented me. There was no way I was going to let my life pass by while I was someone else. It's not worth it.
Wow, that's a very inspiring story. Like you were able to overcome your fear, and the more you started finding yourself, you were clinging on to that fact. So you're not gonna let anyone stop you from finding yourself even more and being yourself, and that's so beautiful. Yeah, that's great. What would you say is the most like challenging aspect about being a coach?
Oh, Nadia, this is a good one. So 2 things I think are very challenging. First thing is to not be an instructor or someone who knows, because when you're a coach, you come from a place of curiosity. So you're sitting there, you're being empathetic, and you really don't know. Like, you're not supposed to know things. You're supposed to listen and ask questions. You're not supposed to tell them what to do. You're not supposed to act like, I know how to do this and I know how to do that. You're just supposed to give them the right questions so they can find themselves. Because I believe every person has the answer, they just really haven't found them yet. So being in that place, like sitting with a client and sometimes feeling like, oh, I know maybe what's going on, but that's not my place. I need to go back into that place of curiosity and just ask questions and let them come. It's not like it's that question. It's just kind of, and you have to rely on your instincts. And this is a bit tough when you're like, when we're used in life to just control and give out knowledge. That's how our strength is. And the second thing is to pause, to just kind of give time to the client to think. So you might ask a question and the client might be just not talking for like a minute, but that's okay, because most of the things are happening like inside of your client where they're thinking and they're kind of analyzing things. And this applies to, and I think these two concepts apply to our personal life too. The more you're curious about life, the more you're curious about yourself and others, and the more you pause to actually think and take a moment to look at things rather than just live them, the better the outcome.
Definitely.
But they're not easy. They're not easy to do at all.
I can imagine. Like, I mean, a lot of us don't do that. Like, I was just reflecting while I was hearing you talk about these two important things, like really pausing and thinking about something. I was like, I don't even do that anymore. I barely do that. It's just so important.
It is.
I remember I went through a coaching training, like just for a day, right? It was just a very brief coaching training. And we had to like practice being the coach and the coachee, like amongst members in the group. And I remember when you were talking about how it's hard to not, like, even if you feel like you know the answers, like deep down, and you want to say something, but you have to refrain from saying it because it's about just asking questions, guiding the person, but not really telling them what to do or what not to do and what you think, what you don't think. So that was a bit hard because we're so used to doing that in our everyday life when you come to think about it. So it's like being in a different atmosphere, like
taking a different perspective. And here's the thing, sometimes you might have an insight to say because you want them to hear it, but it's more about taking permission, like asking, can I give you my insight on this? What do you think about it? Like, you can give it and let them think how they see it. So it takes a different perspective. You kind of have to change the lenses you're wearing. It's like you're wearing glasses and then you're changing them. You're looking from someplace else.
Yeah, totally get that. So you're currently a life coach in Boston, right? And before that, you were practicing life coaching in Lebanon. So I'm just wondering, like, how would you say coaching in Lebanon versus in the US in general? And what, like, how is that different? How are they similar? What's the major, like, drastic change that you could speak about?
So here's the thing about being here is that the way they coach in the US is online. So you work with clients all over the world. Even when I was in Belgium last year, I talked with people who were in Australia, in Bulgaria, and the UK. So you have this international exposure. And I think the most challenging is that when you're working in one country, you're just focusing on the people you're working with, on the method. But when you're working worldwide, there's a lot of culture that comes in here. So people from different culture, different backgrounds. So it's a different approach. You have to be more open-minded. You have to be more understanding and listen more because that's your job. And it's more difficult when people are from different backgrounds because there are things that they have and the way they were brought up that you don't usually, you're
Take
not
it into
used to.
account. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a challenge, but you learn a lot from it because you see, wow, I never thought about it that way, or I never thought that this existed, or maybe sometimes I never thought we have the same problems, even though we're from different countries. Like, I was working with someone from Australia, which is like, I don't know how many hours difference. It was a lot of difference in time. It's a different culture. But the fact that like some of the problems were the same, not having time to finish things, for example, it just felt kind of reassuring. Like, okay, we might be all over the world, but we're all kind of the same in some ways.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what's beautiful about connecting with people from different backgrounds. Like, we are similar more than we've ever thought in so many ways. But then again, as you said, I mean, it's challenging to keep that multicultural approach or lens on, and keep in mind where they're coming from, different backgrounds, different mindsets, attitudes, beliefs, and all that, which we have to take into account. So I totally understand how that could be challenging as well. So I know you have like an Instagram professional page. Was it 20's Way, right?
20's Way.
And also on Facebook, and I got the chance to check them out a bit. They're wonderful, really so inspiring, like quotes and messages here and there. What would you say inspired the creation of that page? And more so, the title is interesting as well, 20's Way. If you can speak about that, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, sure. So, when it comes to the title, because here's the thing, I believe that 20's Way is kind of like our 20s, our early 20s. You grow up when you're young, you look at people like when you're 15 or 14, you look at someone who's 20 and you feel like they're adults and they know what they're doing. And then you're 20 and sometimes you really don't know how you're getting, like even now I'm 29 and it's not supposed to be like you figured everything out, but it's nice to also have the tools to do it better or to do it differently or to be able to change some things. So I thought I do want to help people out from that perspective. I do want to share my experiences. I do want to share my thoughts so that other people who are young, who are feeling like I'm transferring into adulthood now, can benefit from that, can understand that, yeah, it's not easy. You don't just wake up and you're an adult and like everything's simple and wonderful. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of failures sometimes, which is what makes you stronger. It's a lot of changes. It's many things, and you kind of learn to embrace that. And I wanted to share that message. And also, it's a lot of exploration because you might be liking something when you're 20, and when you're 22, you might want to change or want to do it differently. So how do you know and how do you explore it? So I wanted to be able to send that message out, to share it with as many people as I can. And I've always liked to write. So I've always kept diaries, and it felt like the best way for me to communicate it is through words. So I started doing that. I just started posting things and writing things, and I like it. And I feel like if I can just reach one person, then I've done a great job.
That's amazing. I feel like this topic comes up a lot in our lives. It's like self-exploration and how, like, you know, you're not born into this world, knowing what exactly you want to do. Things have changed. I mean, I'm also in my mid-20s right now, and I've just figured out what I want to do for the rest of my life. I mean, I don't know. Things might change again and again, like who really knows? But definitely, I mean, that having that page to support people who are going through that phase, and it's a bit challenging not knowing what you want to do and like having a few ideas in mind. And it's really, I really appreciate that I have such a page to help people, even if it's just one person, that like the domino effect goes on and on. So
thank you.
Would you say, I know that you like to work a lot with like women, inspire them and helping them find themselves and exploring themselves. So what would you say is something that, if you have any advice to give people who are watching us right now, women, youth, what kind of message would you like to convey?
Well, one important, very important thing, we're always thinking of ourselves as less, you know, like, no, I can't do this, or no, I'm not enough to do that, or no, I don't deserve to be loved that way. We're always thinking from like, I need to grow because I'm not enough now, so I need to change to be enough. And I want to remind people that if you just explore what you are now, you will figure out that you are enough, that there's a lot of things you can do, and the things that you like if you just take a chance on one thing, you pick one thing in your life and decide to take a chance on it, a new hobby, anything, just start exploring and never think that you're not enough. I think if you start believing you can do it, even if the first few times you're going to fail, no one starts skating and doesn't fall off I don't know how many times. Like with anything you do, it's when I started the blog, if you look at the first post and then you look at the last post, you're going to see a difference. And then with time, it's also going to change. Yeah. Because you're trying. You don't know exactly what you're doing. So it's a trial and error period. You just have to be sad on the days where you feel like today maybe I'm feeling I'm not enough. But remember that tomorrow you can change that. And there's a voice inside of you that's saying, no, you are enough. No, you can do this. You have people around you who support you. And just kind of reminding ourselves of all of that is what keeps us going. And we should, I think, just if I had to say it in one word,
Mm-hmm.
really, even on the days where you're not feeling, not in one word, in one sentence, even on the days where you're not feeling well,
Yeah.
keep going.
It kind of reminds me of a book I read about like living your life based on principle, not based on emotion. 'Cause so many times you wake up, you're like, I'm not feeling it, I don't do anything, and you just don't do anything. But remembering that there's always a next day and hoping that a good like attitude kicks in is important as well.
You said something right now that's really interesting. You know that emotions actually, if you wake up and you're not feeling it, sometimes it means that maybe you're in the wrong place, or maybe it means that you're sad about something. And kind of exploring that and using it is also a strength that we can grow out of.
That's beautiful what you just said, like making the best of, okay, I'm not feeling well. What am I going to learn from this? What am I going to get out of this? Just writing down. I feel like also that's something I started doing, like journaling is so important. Would you agree about like really having a diary, let's say, or is just something to write your thoughts on every day?
I've kept diaries my entire life. I love having diaries. I love writing things down. Some people maybe don't. It's easier for them to think differently, but because you got to feel things. So you can't. Like, if you're sad, it's not going to go away if you don't let yourself be sad. You have to either write it down. Some people watch a sad movie. So you have to find a way. And if the diary is a pretty powerful one, in my opinion, it's my way of doing things. So it's one of the ways I go to when I need to put my emotion and thoughts into words.
That's so powerful because you can see it out there, like, okay, this is what I'm thinking. And there's something about seeing your thoughts on paper that really makes a difference and resonates with you. So that's
Definitely.
a beautiful way. And I feel like that's a very effective way in which would work with most people.
I agree. It's pretty powerful. Just being able to look at yourself not from inside your thoughts, but from outside is just a great thing.
So definitely we encourage everyone who's currently listening to have a diary or something and write out their thoughts where they're not feeling well or feeling anything negative, even positive,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Just really gaining that habit of writing down and exploring your thoughts.
Yeah. And sometimes the positive can help, because on a day where you're feeling like, okay, I'm failing, there's nothing I can do, you can just go back to that page where you remember like, oh, wow, I wrote really nice things about myself, or someone wrote really nice things about me. So it just kind of is powerful in that way, in a different way, but it's also helpful.
Definitely remembering everything, and like it just uplifts you up, especially if we're talking about the positive things. Thank you. Like that was a beautiful message as well. So we got a question from someone, Daily Seeker. He's asking you, what are some tools you recommend to use while exploring the self, like exploring yourself, what you want to be, who you are?
Here's a few things, because I'm trying to think about personally how I did it, like when I was talking to me, how it helped me do it. I started mapping things. So I look at myself, how I deal with different people, or how I deal in different situations. And I started realizing, for example, that when I was angry, I loved to go boxing. And that's a part of me that realized that this is a passion for me. This is a way how I express my anger. And then I kept going. Like when I'm very happy, how I do. My friend always laughed that I'm always dancing and I have so much energy. So I decided, like, okay, what if I like to learn dancing? So it's kind of sitting and seeing moments, big moments in your life, and how you got through them, how you behaved through them. That helps a lot, because you're mapping different parts of you, how you react, maybe how you talk to your parents. You're very, for example, fun when you're with your friends, but then you're rebellious someplace else. I'm rebellious. What does it mean? It means I like change. So it's just kind of seeing how you are in different places and putting it all together on paper. So starting to look at it like, oh, I'm like that here, I'm like that this, and starting to know more about yourself. One other thing, which is weird, I started to look back when I was really, really young. And I started to think, like, I used to love theater and I used to love dancing. I think those kind of passions don't really go away. Like, they stay somewhere in the back of your mind. And when I was like, when things were bad, I would always play volleyball. So that's the moment I knew, like, okay, I need exercise is my answer for these things. And I used to want to be a teacher, which meant that I wanted to care about others. So you kind of take messages of the little moments that you thought were not important, but all of these kind of make up who you are, whether it's how you're behaving now towards people, or the things you kind of dismissed along the way because you didn't have time, things were different. And last tool, try. Because you might start something and say, yeah, no, that's not mine. One friend, she gave me an analogy of a box of chocolate. When the chocolates are closed, you can never know which one is good. So you have to kind of try out. It's the same
Exactly.
thing. Yeah. So once you do all that, you just have to start trying, like what is working and what is not working. And the more you know, the more you have answers, the more you know yourself.
Exactly. It sounds simple, not as
It's not that simple.
not
I'm
that
telling you the
simple.
big picture, if I tell you the many times things did not work out for me, or the many times where things were like, yeah, no. So yeah, I'm telling you the big picture, but if you go into the details, there's a lot of things that are either funny now, they were not funny at the time, or really sad.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. And I really appreciate what you said, especially about it was very interesting. You brought a very interesting insight about how to like kind of learn about yourselves in different circumstances. As you were just saying, like when you're angry you might play, or like not feeling too well you might play volleyball, and then you might find yourself dancing at certain moments and wanting to be a teacher at other times. So really kind of understanding what it means, like what each phase and what kind of like all the sides of you mean. So kind of putting and connecting all these dots together is important, which also supports the point about really having a journal or like a daily diary where you can write your thoughts out and what things meant for you and what you felt, what you didn't feel, because that also helps you explore yourself as well.
Definitely.
So that's so important. So I mean, now that we're approaching the end of our episode, is there anything else? I'm trying to see if we have any other questions from our audience. But everyone seems to be enjoying this conversation. Do you have anything else you'd like to say before we end this episode? Or just something that you'd like to talk about, something we didn't really emphasize on earlier, although all the topics were really interesting?
The journey is pretty tough. So whoever thinks because that's one thing when I talk, I always like to emphasize on, because when you're talking, everything like, yeah, I'm inspired. There's a lot of energy in what she said, and then you start the next morning. You wake up, you start writing notes, and then you want to change the world. Start small. Like think about big goals, but start with small actions, because our brain cannot handle to do 500 big actions. And it's not going to be easy. Like hearing me say it sometimes might look like it's simple, because you hear people talk and you're like, wow, I want to be like that. It's never that easy. Like there are a lot of days where I really don't want to get out of bed. I'm like, okay, today is not my day. It's how life is. Like there are a lot of 3 a.m. courses that I was like, yeah, tonight I'm taking the night off. There is no way I'm getting out to do the course. So it's not simple, but when it's worth it, you will feel it. That's something I noticed. When it's really, really worth it, you will put in that effort. And start small. Think big, do small actions.
Thank you for sharing this. That's so valuable, actually, because you're right. It takes a lot of time to also develop habits.
It
It
does.
just doesn't come like that. So we kind of have to be patient with ourselves and love ourselves, and just understand that it's gonna take time, as you
Yeah.
said. And I feel like you shared a lot of like valuable advice and insights today. So I wanted to thank you so much for your time and for sharing everything that you did today. I hope we do get to save this live, because I honestly really enjoyed it, and I hope everyone did as much as I did. And I mean, thank you also for like joining me tonight, given the time difference. Is it like 1 p.m. your time, or
Right now, when we started, it was 12 p.m. So I'm not sure what time it is
12:30?
right. Yeah, so it's 12:30 right now. Yeah, thank you for having me, actually, and for being such a great listener and having such insightful questions.
Thank you, my pleasure. Really nice meeting you. I hope one day we can meet in Ithraa, somewhere either in Lebanon or in Jordan.
I hope so too.
And have a wonderful day. And thank you everyone who has joined us as well. Stay tuned for our next episodes. I believe we have one coming up this Monday. And again, this Thursday. Usually we do have, by the way, Monday episodes in Arabic and then Thursday ones in English, just to cater for like everyone. So Would love for you to join us as well.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye, everyone.